You just ate 1,000 calories more than your body needed. Do they instantly become body fat? Not even close. Over the next several hours, those calories will take a surprisingly complicated journey through your body. The first thing your body notices isn't the calories, it's the physical size of the meal. As your stomach expands, stretch-sensitive nerves detect that pressure and begin sending signals through the vagus nerve toward your brainstem. That early fullness signal is mostly mechanical. Your stomach can react to volume before it knows much about the food's energy content. That's one reason large, high-volume foods can temporarily make you feel surprisingly full. Then, chemistry joins the conversation. As partially digested food reaches the small intestine, specialized intestinal cells release signals, such as CCK, especially in response to fat and protein, strengthening the message that the meal should end. Once nutrients are absorbed, they don't all enter general circulation immediately. Blood coming from the intestine travels first toward the liver through the hepatic portal vein, giving the liver an early opportunity to process incoming nutrients. After a carbohydrate-rich meal, insulin rises and the liver begins packing some glucose into glycogen. Think of glycogen as rapidly accessible stored carbohydrate, a biological energy reserve that can later help stabilize blood glucose. But the liver isn't the only storage location. Skeletal muscles can collectively hold much more glycogen because there's simply far more muscle tissue throughout the body. Insulin helps those muscles pull glucose from circulation. There's an important catch. Muscle glycogen is mostly reserved for the muscle storing it, and muscles that were recently exercised have more room to refill than muscles already sitting near their normal storage level. This brings us to one of the biggest misconceptions. Excess carbohydrate doesn't automatically turn straight into body fat after one large meal. Humans can make fat from carbohydrate, but that pathway becomes important mainly under more extreme conditions. That conversion pathway is called de novo lipogenesis. It exists, but research described in the original source suggests meaningful carbohydrate to fat conversion becomes much more important after glycogen stores have been pushed close to capacity through sustained overfeeding, not simply because of one dessert-heavy evening. And some of the meal's energy disappears before storage even becomes an issue. Digestion itself costs energy. Breaking food apart, absorbing nutrients, transporting them, and rebuilding them into usable molecules all require metabolic work. This is called diet-induced thermogenesis. In the source, mixed meals generally cost around 5 to 15% of their energy to process. Protein costs the most, carbohydrate less, while dietary fat is comparatively inexpensive to store. Then there's energy expenditure you barely notice. Every time you stand, shift your posture, pace during a phone call, gesture, tap your foot, or wander around the house, you're using energy without calling it exercise. Scientists call this NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. The source describes a famous overfeeding experiment where people responded very differently. Some unconsciously increased movement dramatically, while others showed much smaller changes, helping explain different weight gain responses. Eventually, however, surplus energy that isn't immediately burned or stored as glycogen can end up as triglycerides in adipose tissue. But even here, the process isn't quite what most people imagine. One large meal doesn't suddenly manufacture an army of new fat cells. According to the research discussed in the source, adult fat cell number tends to remain relatively stable. Weight changes occur largely because existing fat cells expand or shrink. Dietary fat also takes a different route through the body. Because fat doesn't dissolve freely in blood, the intestine packages it into transport particles called chylomicrons, which move through lymph before reaching the bloodstream. After a fat-containing meal, these particles help create a temporary rise in circulating triglycerides known as postprandial lipemia. For several hours, your bloodstream is actively transporting dietary fat toward tissues that can burn or store it. Your body also appears to prioritize fuels differently. Carbohydrate burning adjusts relatively quickly when carbohydrate intake rises. Fat burning is more flexible and can be reduced while the body deals with incoming carbohydrate, indirectly encouraging more dietary fat to remain available for storage. And the effects may not vanish the moment you go to sleep. The source describes research where a day of overeating altered the body's triglyceride response to a meal consumed the following morning. Interestingly, overeating doesn't guarantee you'll naturally compensate by feeling much less hungry the next day. That means relying purely on appetite to perfectly correct yesterday's excess may not always work the way people expect. The final piece is individual variation. Give two people the same surplus, and their bodies may divide that energy differently between heat production, spontaneous movement, carbohydrate burning, fat oxidation, and storage. So what actually happens to 1,000 extra calories? First comes stomach stretch and appetite signaling. Then liver and muscle glycogen compete for glucose. Digestion burns some energy. Unconscious movement may burn more, and the remainder gradually moves toward longer-term storage. The important lesson isn't that overeating has no effect. It's that your body is far more dynamic than a simple calories in to fat equation suggests. Which part surprised you most? Tell me below and subscribe for more science-backed breakdowns of what happens inside your body.